Thank you, Rob. Everyone hear me okay? How's everyone doing? Good. How many folks here tonight had some pizza? Okay, I'm just demonstrating the fact that you all can raise your hands if I ask you questions later. This is establishing trust with the audience. Later in the presentation, I might ask for someone's credit card. I'm just saying. Let me ask you guys another question, though. How many folks here have an idea for either a new product, a new service, or maybe a startup, either a new product or service in your organization, or a product or service that you'd rather go out and do as a startup? How many people have an idea tonight? Okay, so the answer was almost 100% for both those questions. So I think there's a correlation between eating pizza and having new ideas. Okay, one more question, and then we'll start talking a little deeper, is how many folks in the room have heard of something called a minimum viable product? Okay, just about everyone. I don't know the people watching live streaming if they're actually sitting and raising their hands or not. I can't see them, so I'm assuming all of them raised their hand too. Can anyone give me a good definition of a minimum viable product? Yes, sir.
Something that demonstrates your idea and you could actually make money out of it and shows where you can go with the product.
Something that demonstrates your idea, you can make money out of it, and shows where you can go with the product. Maybe. Sort of. I'll give you partial credit.
Okay.
You earn half a slice of pizza. How about that? It's better. You earn some of the apples and grapes. Anyone else want to take a stab? Yes? So, getting much closer. You get 2/3 of a pizza. So say that again. Something you can show to the customer or potential customer and get feedback. Okay, that's good. I'll take one more right here. Eating the pizza. So like you've already earned the pizza. So you have the right answer. You have to have the right. If not, I'm taking the pizza away. Good.
What they said, except that
Hold on. What they said. That's good.
there needs to be the minimal feature set that will accomplish that. So the smallest set of capabilities that will be.
So what they said, but the minimum feature set that they can get the feedback on.
That they can get feedback on and that the customer would consider buying.
Okay. Someone else is very eager. Yes, I'll take one more.
So something which would validate your most critical or important assumption, a business or technical assumption.
Something that will validate your most critical business or technical assumption. Ding, 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 give him a prize. You get the pizza. That's a spot on. Because the reason why I bring this up is before we talk about the minimum viable product, I'd like to define it a little bit. Because what happens is a lot of people think minimum viable product is something here, or some people think it's something different. And you can see we had 4 people answer, and we have 4 actually different definitions. And my definition is slightly different as well. And even the people who coined the term have slightly different definitions. And what I see, though, is a lot of times people building a beta or even an actual product and calling it a minimum viable product. I get people who tell me, we're going to have an MVP done in 9 months. Like, really? 9 months? That's a really long time. Considering that, like, my average life cycle of an MVP should be 9 hours, maybe, right? Maybe 1 business day. And I once ran, I should probably tell you a little bit about me, but I'll let that come out more in the presentation. But one of the things I've done in my career, I ran a startup accelerator. And I ran an accelerator, just the way you would think an accelerator runs. It had a batch come in, a bunch of teams came in. We took a really, really large equity slice compared to the amount of money we put in, which is awesome for the accelerator people, not so awesome for startups. And we put them through the 13 or 14-week program, had a demo day, and I had one team, and I was doing this in Hong Kong. I built Hong Kong's very first startup accelerator, and it was focused exclusively on mobile, which seems silly today, but this was like 5 years ago, before mobile was mobile. I mean, it was still mobile, but it wasn't mobile. I mean, Facebook didn't even have a mobile app at the time, right? But what happened was a team came in from Portugal, and I hope they're watching right now, because they know I'm talking about them, because I said they were building the maximum viable product, right? They said it's still an MVP. And they came in from Portugal and they said, oh, we're so happy to be in Hong Kong. We hate Chinese food, and we just want to sit and code for 13 weeks. And I'm like, oh. Another company went through the accelerator, and they had an idea for a product. And it was a great idea. And instead of going and validating, they start building it. And what's interesting is I flew in a guy named John from Australia up to give people technical help in week 2 of the accelerator. And John went in and hacked them a demo. Great. Fast forward a really long period of time, like a year. And they said, we're now finally throwing out John's code. I'm like, wait a second. For a year, you've been building on top of the demo you had in week 2? I go, that's great that you have a product, but you actually didn't learn then, because by definition, you didn't change much if the underlying base part of your application. So I try to challenge people to do MVPs without even having a computer. So I didn't give you my definition of an MVP. I'm not going to type it down. Actually, yeah, I'm going to tell you my definition of MVP. An MVP is an experiment that you run in order to measure, as you said over there, to measure, well, not measure, to test an assumption. But what you need to do is measure a user's behavior and learn from it. So some critical things that need to go into an MVP. First of all, you need an assumption. And the assumption can't be, people want my product. That's a very bad assumption. We're going to get very, very fine in a minute or two and talk about what defines these assumptions. But at the same time, if you're not measuring a behavior, you're not actually building an MVP. You're just fooling yourself. You're building a beta. And you'll be like, oh, let me see if people want to play with my thing. And even today, I'm just working on a quick little side project with 2 friends. And I have pretty much a PM, and she's driving the process. And then I have a developer, and the 3 of us went to lunch. And the developer keeps talking about how we have like a simple MVP. And he keeps talking about how we need to have a share button and have an engagement button. I'm like, you are trying to drive people to your restaurant, and you haven't determined if you're an Italian restaurant or a Japanese restaurant, or if you are a fast food place or a fancy restaurant. You haven't determined if you actually want to be wholesale, like Costco Pizza, or if you actually want to sell candy. Right? And why would you want to drive people there yet? Right? So an MVP isn't about growth hacking and things like that. So how many folks are familiar with the business model canvas? Okay, about maybe 30% of the room, business model canvas. So this is typically the first place people go in the modern kind of era, so to speak, of replacing a business plan. Really? I'm trying to pull up a nice business model canvas. I think Google has been getting in trouble with their images, so not all the images will pop up anymore. There we go. So this is what a business model canvas looks like. So I think about only 20% of the room raised their hand. This is the modern replacement for a business plan. And if you look on it, it's got 9 boxes. I'm not going to go over the 9 boxes, but I'll just take a little walk down memory lane. About 10 years ago, I was in business school, and I took a class. Anyone here get an MBA? Okay, about 10% of the room. So you guys probably share my pain. You had a semester-long class called entrepreneurship. What did you guys do in your entrepreneurship class? Maybe you went to a better school than I did. I didn't go to that good of a school, actually. I got rejected from like the bad school, so no one who went to an MBA school? You're afraid they'll take it away from you or something? Anyone here go to Stanford? Because they teach it at Stanford. Okay. It is called entrepreneurship, and the entire class is building a business plan. There's 10 sections to a business plan. Each week of your semester is a different section. Okay, some people are nodding. Hopefully the people with the MBAs are the ones that are nodding. That's a complete waste of time. Right? I'm an investor. We invested in 40 companies. I haven't read a single business plan. Right? I had one successful company tell me, we're going to do $1 million in revenue next year. How do I budget for that? She goes, can we set aside time to budget? I said, sure. I said, hey, let's do it now. She goes, you have the time? I go, yeah. She goes, okay, how do I do it? I go, so you want to do $1 million in revenue next year? She goes, yeah. I go, take $1 million divided by 12. Right? I mean, it's a startup. Like, if you're going to hit the million, it's probably going to be like, backloaded, but I mean, budget for it that way. So I'm not saying you shouldn't plan. I'm just saying that the tools that we have today for planning are geared towards big businesses. And that is the big challenge that startups face. Steve Blank down at Stanford says a startup is not a small version of a big company. Right? So a lot of people think a startup is a small version of a big company. In essence, it's an experiment searching for a business plan, which potentially can morph itself into a company. So that's why when I meet 3 people in a Starbucks and they have an idea, and one person's a CFO, one person's a CEO, one person's a CTO, and I say, erase all those titles. You're all just startup entrepreneurs, right? Figure it out, right? Don't go in and do that. And by consequence, there's no reason to go in the experimental phase to come up with this big business plan, 30 pages. And the reason for that is, one, if you're going to tell me a month 36 how much money you're spending on toilet paper, I'd like you to come run the finances at my house, but I don't think a startup can predict what they're going to spend in year 3 on anything, whether it's marketing, whether it's office supplies, whether it's toilet paper. So that said, is a bunch of people got together, and this is the first attempt. There's multiple different generations of this. It's called the Business Model Canvas. And what it has you do is fill out some key things that give you some critical thinking. And you can use this as a tool. Don't be a slave to the tool, because you'll see one of the categories is customer segments. Customer segments, can anyone tell me what a customer segment is? Or give me an example of a customer segment? You answered already, and you're periscoping. Hi, Mom. But I will let you answer since no one else raised their hand. What's a customer segment? The section of customers who you're targeting. Okay. Sounds like you've read up on this stuff. Got it. So an example of a customer segment would be, let's just hope my wife is not watching this. My wife is expecting women in their late 30s who are pregnant living in San Mateo County. That's a customer segment, right? Teenage girls between 13 and 20. That's a customer segment, right? Customer segments, as you described, are sections of a customer population. So some of the things I've done in my career, both as an investor and as a startup entrepreneur myself, is I have gotten lucky enough to speak at a lot of events like this and work. I ran my own accelerator, but because I ran my own accelerator, lots of other accelerators brought me in to meet their batches. And I probably worked with over 200 startups in the last 4 or 5 years. And they all struggle with the exact same thing. They struggle with 2 boxes on this sheet. The first one is their segments. It's very rare that I meet a startup that has their segment nailed. But if you don't have your segment nailed, the rest of your planning is garbage. So my advice to you is when you go and download this sheet, and by the way, when you're going to Google Business Model Canvas, you're going to see a lot of religion for competing canvases or Canvi. I don't know which is correct, so I said both. I didn't want to offend the Canvi camp. Who cares? Just use one of them. But this is a perfectly acceptable one. I think they all kind of have some problems if you use them incorrectly, because I'm only going to tell you to use 2 boxes. Okay? First box is your segment. Go out and figure out what your segment is. Let's create a segment. Who are we going to talk to? Someone, anyone, give me a segment. Yes? Small business owners. That segment is still too broad. Are they small business owners that own tour companies on Maui? I would like to sell to that segment, actually. Or are they fast food restaurants in San Mateo County? Or is it something else? There we go. Now we have a segment. Restaurant owners. What kind of restaurants? Fast food. There we go. We have a segment. Fast food restaurants in the Bay Area. There's our segment. Okay? So, what do you think of all these other things you're supposed to work on? Resources, activities, partners, value proposition, customer relationships, sales channels. What do you think the next thing you should do after you nail your segment? After you nail your customer segment. Value proposition. Okay, awesome. You guys are already there. Like you are like 3/4 of the way through Y Combinator now. Seriously, I'm not kidding. This is what you teach. Trust me, I spend 3 weeks on this in the accelerator. Actually, every Monday I would make the team come with their canvas. And I would usually take a big pen and go, wrong, and things like that. Okay, so let's actually take a look at my slides, which I don't have slides. So this is just quick. My name, there's my Twitter account, works on my PC. That is because I have worked managing developers for better part of 2 decades. And my favorite line is when there is a bug, they say, oh, but it works on my insert whatever they have. So I just shortened it to PC because then I'd have the longest Twitter handle of all time. Works on my PC, works on my Mac, works on my iPad, works on my tablet. It'd be really long. So it works on my star.star. And I always say if it works on your machine, what do? We'll take your machine and ship it to the customer. All right? This is my blogs on Medium. I've done a lot of talks like this, and I've basically just converted my talks into blog posts. So if you missed something tonight, it's actually probably already up there. Right? And in essence, to prove it to you, where's my, over here is actually the blog where I get most of tonight's material, right? So it's called Build an MVP, Not a Beta, which has been a very popular one on Medium. So in essence, if we go back to my very world-famous slides here, we've started with your customer segment. Yay. Fast food restaurants. Then we've went down to our value proposition. Oh, wow, we haven't done that part yet. Okay, what's our startup going to do? Somebody.
Make sandwiches with robots.
Someone's doing that already, so we can't steal that from them. It's called, oh goodness, it graduated Lemnos Labs.
Make robots that make sandwiches.
Make robots that make sandwiches. Let's do something different. How about we get away from the robot space? Even though I'm very intrigued by robots. In the back, oh, this was your idea in the first place. You got us here. Why didn't you create a better segment? Like, when I'm in Vegas, you should hear the segments I get. I'm just saying. I'm not kidding. A reverse auction. So ordering, people, I don't know, I'm from the East Coast. I'm from New York City originally, and then I lived in Asia for 5 or 6 years, then I moved here, and I think everything here is slow. Does anyone here a transplant from the East Coast? How do you drive? Someone tell me. After, come up and tell me how you drive, because my blood pressure, the doctor says, what are you doing? I go, I drive a lot. Anyway, okay, so I think things are slow in California, so people ordering, maybe some price aggregation, great. We have our value prop. It actually doesn't matter. We're just going to say value prop. And we'll just say it has something to do with ordering. Great. Okay, so what next? What do? No one knows. We go see an MVP talk. Activities. Sort of, yeah. What else? Someone said something in over here? Key what? Partners. No, we don't care about partners at this point. Remember, I only tell you to fill out this box and this box. That's the Steve's canvas. In the back. Custom. No other boxes. We're done. We're done with these boxes. They don't exist. Someone up here had a point? Was it? No. Do we relate it to the segment? There we go. We make sure that our segment, that the value proposition is applicable to the segment. That's our first key assumption. That the people we're building this for want it. Right? Can't tell you how many times people built something for consumer and then turned around and said, oh, consumers don't want this. But then they realized I had a big business doing something else. So what happens is we need to make a leap of faith, so to speak, but we have some assumptions. So as I said, if we go back to the canvas, in my opinion, the canvas needs like a box here. That's the sub-box of this. That you're underneath your value proposition. Right, so your value proposition is tightly coupled to your segment. But underneath your value prop, before you move on, is assumptions, our core assumptions. And that's what actually we're going to spend the night talking about. We're going to talk about, we're not going to get to these other boxes. Right, so what we're going to do, right, we're talking about from your idea to an MVP, we're going to test these assumptions. Now, we're going to build an MVP. And remember I told you an MVP should be small. It should be something that measures a behavior. And what I left out is that in addition to measuring the behavior, you need to make a prediction of what that behavior was going to be. And then you compare those results to reality, and then you make some decisions about your assumptions. So let me take a step back and say, How many people want free food? Raise your hand. Everybody wants free food. Great. If we weren't being recorded, I would tell you a not so PG version of this story. But anyway, free food. If I ask you, do you want free food? You all raise your hand. Now let me tell you the kicker. You all have to come to my house at 6 in the morning. And I don't know, I'm going to make up some other really important things that you're supposed to do that don't make it so free. Then you're probably like, yeah, I don't think I want the free food. Right? It's inconvenient to you. The time is different, this, that, the other thing. So when you're testing an MVP, the first instinct is, let me go talk to people. That doesn't work. People tell you what they think is the truth, but they're lying to you. Okay? They just flat out lie to you. Not because they're dishonest people, but they lie to you because they don't know what they want to do, because they don't see what you have. So I tell people, why don't you test your assumptions before you even do anything on a computer? We will get there. So let's start thinking of our assumptions. Your value proposition might have a few assumptions behind it. So go back here. We have the customer segment. We have the value proposition. We have assumption number 1. Assumption number 2. Did you realize you were going to come here and watch me type all night? I got to admit, it's better than PowerPoint, right? So let's just say that our fictitious startup that's going to do something with fast food restaurants, something around ordering. So our customer segment are the owners of these fast food restaurants, or maybe not. Maybe it's the customers, right? Doesn't matter, right? We have a value proposition. Under that value proposition, we have 3 core assumptions. And remember, the assumption isn't they're going to use my product. The assumption is something like this. Does anyone? I'm going to put you on the spot, Mr. Periscope, since you seem to have the answers to everything. What is the definition of a value proposition?
Value proposition is something which will, if customer is doing something, he has a pain point, and if we can
Pain point, that's good.
if we can remove that pain point, and
Removal of pain points.
it's
Okay.
one way of one type of customer.
You're good. That's close. That gets you half a pizza slice. So for those in the back that didn't hear it or listening at home, it says customer has a pain point. The value proposition is the solution to the pain point. Almost. Close enough. I think everyone should give you a round of applause. That's good job. I put him on the spot. Your definition of value proposition is that, but it's the delta between the current solution to the pain point and your solution. For example, I don't like waiting in line, well, anywhere. I don't like waiting in line at the movies. And you may have a solution that I can buy tickets on my mobile phone, boom, 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 boom. But you know what? I just go use Fandango. So the delta between your solution has to be like orders of magnitude better than like Fandango. Right? In order, right? Because you're solving my pain point, and yeah, Fandango's slow, and it takes a big surcharge, and whatever. I can't print the tickets on this, blah, blah, blah. But the definition of a value proposition is the delta, the difference between the current solution to the problem, the current alternative they have to your solution. So I think that's one example. Another example I give you is life sciences. When you have drugs that cure diseases, like the alternative is continue having the disease, right? I mean, that's a pretty big value proposition, right? The delta between, right? If you have measles or cancer or something, you would probably think that's a high value proposition. So the value propositions have to be something that is tangible and that, again, goes in between what already exists and what you have, or what you think you have. Because right now we're still at the idea stage. The beautiful part about this is this can all be done in Starbucks in an hour, right? What we've done so far. Or actually almost everything I show you up into building the thing can be done pretty quickly. So let's go through the process of building an MVP. And along the way, we'll learn some other fun stuff. So we're going to do this just for the first assumption. So we'll do like MVP number 1, assumption number 2, you get the point, we'll have MVP number 2. And then assumption 3, we'll have MVP number 3. Oops. Pretty straightforward, right? So just to review again, we go back to that business model canvas. We started with our segment. Our segment is tightly coupled to our value proposition. Underneath that value proposition are going to have anywhere between 1 and some number larger than 1 assumptions. Those assumptions are critical pain points to a potential customer base, your segment, and there always is a solution. Even if it's a life-curing drug, there's an alternative, right? The alternative is death. If your life, like a good example is, I like to go to Starbucks, and if you told me that I could materialize Starbucks using my phone, like they do in Star Trek, I would say, awesome. The differential, right, the delta between going to startups, you can see I work with startups. Actually, startups and Starbucks are tightly coupled. They should be taking equity. They should be like, soon you're going to see the Starbucks Accelerator program, I'm sure. But you can go to Starbucks and wait in a long queue, long line, pay your $12 million for an over-expensive, or I can just get it on my phone. But they said, oh, but your phone is going to cost $12 million. Well, I'll stick with the alternative. I'll just happily go use the Starbucks app and take it from there. Okay, so we have our assumptions, tangible delta between an existing solution to a problem and your solution to the problem. Right, I hate when entrepreneurs come up to me and say, I have a solution to a big problem. And then I ask them, well, what are people doing today? Right, that's the number one thing you have to ask yourself, is you've identified a problem, you've got a creative solution, but think about the customer. Always come back to the customer. Put yourself in their shoes, in their seat, in whatever it is, and find out what they're doing today and why. And that will make it better. Okay, everyone follow so far? Good? Okay, so how do we build an MVP? Anyone want to take a stab? Not like open up a text editor like Sublime Text. Okay. Remember I said an MVP has a critical function. It was something that had to measure a behavior. So if you're measuring a behavior, what exactly are you going to measure? What? A survey. What did I tell you about customers? It starts with an L. Liars. All customers lie. Let's all say that. All customers lie. One more time. All customers lie. Awesome. Okay. I wonder if like people at home are watching it like weird time zones or in their cube somewhere and they're screaming, all customers lie. Oh, wait, I'm at work. Okay. You know they say that customers always right? Yeah, it's BS. Right? Because you're building a product. You're building something. The customer isn't right. I mean, the customer is right because ultimately the customer's behavior is right, not what the customer actually says. Right? So in essence, the customer is always right, but it's a customer behavior that's right. Because measuring the customer's behavior will build your product. And all great companies were built that way. Whether on purpose or by accident, all great companies were built that way. Okay, so we're going to measure the behavior. So remember what I said is you need to make a prediction. So first of all, you need to measure behavior. Like what behavior? So we're building this thing that has a mobile app, something to do with ordering. So I guess we have like a website, and we send people to the site, and they have to say how many people sign up or something like that. Right, a landing page, something like that. So, or how many people download the app, like something, right? We have to measure something. Usually it has to do with a marketing funnel in some way, shape, or form, potentially. Not every MVP is like this. But in essence is, how many people sign up. Okay, and then we're going to say make a prediction. So meaning is we want 50 people to sign up. Does that sound good? Sure. Okay. What about 47? Is that okay? No. Okay, so it has to be 50. Okay. Why? It's a nice round number. I like 50. Okay. Why not? You already know the answer, right? You need to make a prediction based on real life business metrics. This is the crux of it all. If you just say 50, if 50 people sign up, that's good. What if you leave it up for like 6 months and like I got a better idea. What if you leave it up for, let's say your product costs $1 and it cost you like, I don't know, a year to build, so a year of your life building the product, and you put it online and 1 billion people visited your web page and 50 people downloaded it. I think there's like 3 billion people online total. So that means your total addressable market is like 150. So you spend, and you're charging $1 in the app, 99 cents in the app store, right? Not too good. You would have a grand total of $148.50 minus the 30% cut Apple takes. Okay, they might have pity on you. So you need to make a prediction based on some facts. How do you get these facts? How do we know 50 is the right number? Observation of what? Behavior. That's good. We are going to measure behavior, but that's how we measure. Of your cost, now we're getting there. We're sort of there. Competition. No, you're doing this. This is solo, man. This is like, no one's done this before. We're making like something brand new. We're making like the next XYZ gizmo. So there's no competition. Okay, so what we need to do is estimate a little bit of math. And it's going to suck in the first 1 or 2 iterations. And you're going to say, I don't need to do it. But if you do it, you'll make better predictions, and it'll get better. So there's a little formula that I always show people. And you may have seen it before. If you went to business school, they drill this into your head, like, or at least if we went to a better business school than I did. They didn't do it in my business school. You have your customer lifetime value. Right, so this is the estimate that you're going to have of what a customer is going to spend, the profit that you're going to make from a customer coming to your system or your product, your app, whatever it is. Even if you're building a restaurant, like a brick and mortar restaurant, not like restaurant.co app download. Meaning if you're just building a McDonald's, you have to kind of figure out, okay, how do I build loyalty? How many people come back? This is why Starbucks has a loyalty card, now app, right? Because they're trying to measure your customer lifetime value. Obviously, at the MVP assumption phase, you're going to be making a wild guess. But you can still base your guess in reality. This is where you look at, are there competitions? Are there similar sites? Like, what do they look like? Try to anchor your assumption in reality. Don't just say $50, right? Like, if you're building an e-commerce site, look at the gold standard, Amazon. All right, what's their CLV look like? Okay, I'm not Amazon. Let me drop that down by 1,000,000%, or like whatever it is. But you figure out, what is somebody going to spend on our site? Now, this is a core assumption that eventually will get tested, right? Meaning your CLV itself. But for now, you're going to make an assumption there. Let's just put in a dollar amount. Someone tell me what they think our CLV is going to be. $1,000. Awesome. I want to join your startup.
Is this per user?
Per user. And it's your profit for the user. So, obviously you don't know things about your cost of goods sold and all that stuff, but this is what you think over the course of the user's engagement with your product or service, what the profit you're going to make from that user is. So every new user that comes to your system, that is their profit.
How long?
So this is where it gets fun. When Jeff Bezos was sitting and writing this formula down on his legendary journey across the United States, he figured that he might have a customer for 2 or 3 years, right? I don't know. You guys recently get those emails from Amazon. I got my 20th anniversary order email. Like, I've been ordering crap from Amazon for 20 years. Like, my CLV for them must be like, I don't know what. Like, I joined Prime and I get like toothpaste delivered. Like, seriously, just like one thing of toothpaste. I get nuttier and nuttier on Prime. You guys should do the same. Just to see what you can get from it. Like, will they really just deliver 1 tube of toothpaste? The answer is yes. Yes, sir.
When you're calculating your CLV and you have a freemium model, you have to discount it by the
So the question is, if you have a CLV and you have a freemium model, everyone know freemium, right? Partly free, you convert users to paid. Do you have to calculate the percentage of people that convert? No, because we'll get to that in a second. Meaning is, you only care about the people who pay. Like, if you have 1 billion users and then 5 people pay, you only care about the customer lifetime value of those 5. And theoretically, you are accounting for the billion that aren't paying because they raise the costs, right? Meaning is, you know that it costs, $1 of bandwidth per month to service a user, and you have 100 users and 5 are paying, right? You're losing $95. Anyone get my fast math? Right? So that would go into that would go into your formula, right? The total cost of your system divided by the paying users' revenue gives you your, will give you your profit. So you don't have to do it directly, but it should be factored in that respect. Okay, so you take your customer lifetime value, and then the second part of the formula is your customer acquisition costs. So this is some other number, theoretically lower than 1,000. Do you see where we're going with this, by the way? Hopefully you see where I'm going with this. I'm going to change this around just because I don't like big numbers. I was going to say I wasn't good at math. I was actually ridiculously good at math, but I'm going to pretend I wasn't good at math just to make it easier to see the numbers here. So if I do this, is this happy or sad? Sad? Happy. Yes, happy, happy. I will build a profitable business. Let me go further. Goodness. Let's actually review how important this formula is. Are we happy or sad? Happy. Hold on. Let me show you. I usually do this. I wasn't going to do this because you said some of you had MBAs. I was going to not give you the trick question, so to speak. Happy or sad? Sad. So the difference of 2 cents, makes or breaks your business. That's a pretty important formula, don't you think? You should write it down. I'm not kidding. Now, granted, if you growing at 1 cent, you'd have to get every person, you want to be a unicorn. You'd have to get like every person on the planet to buy your thing, right, in order to grow, right, because your profit is 1 cent per customer. So you will build a profitable business. It's just take a really long time. Conversely, of course, if you're negative 1 cent, you will build a decliningly slow death business in a really painful, slow, painful way. Typically speaking, this should look like this. Oops. Go away. See, I really should use PowerPoint. CLV minus CAC equals some real... You need a really big number. Okay? Let's pretend that the input of this is like, I don't know. I'm just going to say, forget about the lifetime. I mean, I could do that. My lifetime value, whatever, this is equal to 10. So this would obviously be 11. Just to fast forward to later, if you were pitching for a Series A, and you actually have this number, this formula nailed with real data over the course of like 2 or 3 years, or even it's just a course of 2 or 3 months, and you're an investor and you say, well, I'm going to go raise, I don't know, what was the latest crazy, you all think it's crazy, but it's not. It's actually pretty genius. What was the latest crazy round? BuzzFeed today raised $200 million, right? They probably told, and NBC was the investor, they probably told NBC, we're going to spend $100 million on customer acquisition. NBC sees this and says, input 100 million, output 1 billion. Obviously, the numbers probably don't scale the same way, but don't laugh. That's actually true. Meaning is, if you have your customer acquisition costs nailed, right, and you've got this formula proven to work, and you go and you raise venture capital and you say, I'm going to set aside 10 million of this round for customer acquisition, and we think our acquisition costs will go down because we're going to have economies of scale and our buying power, right? And we're going to start squeezing them and getting that to go up, you now have the investor's attention, right? when I have people come in and pitch me and they're talking about this, I always say, well, how can you get this lower and get this higher, right? That's what the pressure that's going to be put on them by their board, by their investors, right? So very important formula. We all agree? Okay. So that's the good news. The bad news is the formula is very hard to do in the early stage. Like we have nothing. We have an idea about restaurants and an app that does something with ordering. And it's freemium, because someone brought up freemium. So we need to convert people from free to paid. So that's what our MVP needs to address. So let's take a step back and just review, because I don't want to send any of you to sleep here. But what happens is we have our assumption, okay, because we're kind of getting through this now. We're almost there. We have our assumption that, remember, tied to our value prop, which was tightly coupled to our customer segment. That assumption, just the first assumption number one here, we're doing a test, right? We're measuring a behavior. We've kind of worked this number the best we can, and we figured if we go to Google and buy AdWords, and we spend, $100 on AdWords, okay? In order to get our acquisition cost to like $1, like we need a 4% conversion. Follow my math, right? So we don't need 50. Remember we said 50 was great? Like who cares what the number is? You could do this test with $1,000 or with $1 million, right? So what happens is we've determined that we want a 4% conversion rate on our marketing campaign, because if we do this at scale, if we've run our numbers, it would make us wildly profitable. So let's test it with $100, right? Let's test it with a small amount of money. Does that seem to make sense? So that's our prediction. That's the behavior we're also going to measure, right? Like, are people doing something? And you're predicting that 4% of the people will do what you want. Yes? I made it up. But in reality, you won't make it up. Meaning is you do the math here, and you say, in order to build a profitable business, okay, we're going to need this many customers. In order to get to this many customers, we need this much marketing spend. And if that marketing spend is some big number, and then you start saying we're going to get a lot of people looking at our campaign, our ad campaign. And of that ad, so I have $1 million to spend. It's a perfect example. Let's just pretend my customer lifetime value was $1, and you wanted to make $50 because we wanted 50. And you had $1 million to spend to get to that 50. You would say that 50 divided by 1 million would be a really, really small percent. That would be the conversion number you would need to earn $50. Obviously, you would be crazy to want to make $50 off $1 million of marketing spend, but you follow my logic, right? Yeah. It'd be more it would be like, if you want to earn $10 per customer, and in essence, you would have maybe 10,000 total people come and 4% convert, and then you would have the $10 times those 4, something like that. Does everyone understand? Right? I went through that very fast just because the number is going to be a number you're going to make up that's grounded in some reality. That's why you had the question, because it is a little loosey-goosey in this early stage. Meaning this number comes from the formula, but your formula isn't perfect. Okay, so this would be your conversion rate, right? So this is like the number of people who download the app or install the app or whatever it is, right? So this is your conversion rate. Okay, so results. Remember, you measure the results. Yay. So I'm going to tell you, having done this many times, having watched people do it, you really have one of 3 things. There's no real difference. So you're looking for a 4% conversion. You're either going to get like So these are the results. Let's say you got 0.787%. What do? You pivot? No, we don't use the word pivot. That was like so 2010. You declare your assumption invalid. Right? just to give you a definition of a pivot, by the way, that's another grossly under term, is when you change one of these boxes. So when you switch your customer segment from 17-year-old girls to 52-year-old men, that's a pivot, right? Declaring that your hamburger making machine sucks and you're going to go make Instagram is a freaking reboot. I don't know. It's not a pivot, right? Okay. So that's just that. So your results come back. You have 0.787%. Yay. Well, not yay, but your assumption was invalid. Okay. Assuming your data is correct, I mean, you might want to run it again, right, and test it. You run it and you get 66.27%. Wait, so hold on. So first thing you do here. Oops. Oh, wow. Sad. Bad assumption. What do you do here? Happy. Call Steve. I'll invest in your company. Okay. This and this is pretty often. This is once in a while. This is the more likely one. You have a good idea, but you're just not quite there yet. Is this okay to go forward? Is your assumption valid? Almost. Not yet. Correct answer. Because remember, 1 penny can put you out of business. And now you're $1.01 off. If 1 penny can put you out of business really, really slow, $1.01 can put you out of slow 100 times faster. Right? So you still have an invalid assumption here. But what you could do is change your MVP around a little bit. I moved to China a number of years ago, and I would log onto all these Chinese websites. And you know the OK button? Like, you think that's pretty universal. But the OK button in China is red. They like the color red. Very specifically, the historical reasons is because of communism, and communists are like, no, red's a good color. Green is the imperial color of the West. They changed the traffic lights. Red is go. No. Not anymore, but they did. Oh yeah, they were smart enough. Oh, there is one city in the world that is still like that. Can anyone name the one communist holdout where red is go? North Korea, Pyongyang, yeah. And Beijing, it used to be that way. And then green was stop, red was go, then there was too many accidents. And this is back in this was in the bicycle era. So all these bicycles crashing into each other. It's a mess. Anyway, I would be clicking on the red button. And then it kept rejecting me. I'm like, what's going on? I'm trying to get into this website, and I keep getting the red button or the green. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm hitting the green button. And it keeps saying sorry. I'm like, oh. So back to your MVP. You may want to change red and green around depending on your audience. And magically, you may go from this number to this number, right? If you're in China, for sure, right? So this gives you the opportunity to play with your MVP 1 or 2 more times. Not many, not crazy. Don't go crazy like the mad scientist. I hate movies about entrepreneurs. They suck. Don't watch them. Like the guy who built the windshield wiper. Like, are you kidding me? Like, his wife left him, his children left him, he went broke, and then when he was like 90, the car companies give him some money. Like, oh yeah, here's like $100,000. Like, seriously, like, that's not a lean or agile startup, right? That is like stupidity, to be honest. Like, accept the fact that they ripped you off and move on. Like, okay, anyway. So don't be like the guy in the movie. So have some intellectual honesty and say, okay, 2.99% is close but no cigar. Can we make a change to our language, to our page layout, or maybe a little bit about your assumption was off. Maybe there was some other things you need to change. So do your MVP test 1 or 2 more times and try to get to that 4%. Right? If you get to the 4%, yay, what do you do next? Build it. No. Go back up here. Yes, you do it now for assumption 2. And here's the best part. Once you get your data back from assumption 1, usually assumption 2 is like, oh crap, yeah, scratch assumption 2, right? You've learned something, right? You've measured a user's behavior, and you've now learned from it, so you're probably going to go back and rethink some of these assumptions. So what you probably will do is, now that your assumption has been validated, is go back to your business model canvas and start thinking about your value prop and your customer segment. And start asking yourself the questions. Well, if we expanded our segment to not just fast food restaurants, but like these hybrid, like In-N-Out Burger. I think In-N-Out Burger is not fast food. My wife swears it's fast food. I swear it's fine dining. Um, she says to me, like, where do you want to go for your birthday? I'm like, an Out Burger. Right? And also, my wife is pregnant, and she like eats like a rabbit, like the all that healthy food. And like, this is our first kid, and she is eating so much junk food. She goes, it's definitely your kid. And I said, if I would have known this, I said, we'd have 10 kids by now. But she suggests, let's go to In-N-Out Burger. It's great. So what happens is your value prop, you start thinking of your value prop, you start thinking of the customer segment, and you may redo all your assumptions, you may not. But then you go back to potentially those a second and third assumption or new assumptions, right? So, mood lighting. Look at that. I have a car, and it's got the big monitor in the car, and like when it turns like 7 p.m., it like darkens. This was like that experience. Okay, so do the same thing for MVP2. Go through that exact same process, and then you do the same thing for MVP3, and then guess what? What do you do next? Do you build the product? Get your money? Yeah, that's a good time to get money. I agree. Go try to get a seed round. But you've MVP'd enough. Now the next step, after you've went through all the assumptions you've had, make a bigger MVP that incorporates all those assumptions, right? Because you've tested just particular assumptions, right? Okay, almost done. Then we'll do Q&A. And I think we have got more than enough time for Q&A. But I do have one more lesson. Now that you've done this, how long should this process take? What? 30 days? 1 to 3 months? I heard a week. A week or two? You were hedging? You were better with a week? Yes?
How are you going to get people to go to your site?
Google AdWords. You could stand on the side of the street with a. I was in a coffee shop today in Palo Alto, and some girl walked up and said, hi. And girls don't talk to me. So that was like the first thing. Bing, there's an attractive woman talking to me. I'm like, what do I do? Like, oh my God. I got over that in about 10 seconds. And then she's like, can you download my app and give me feedback? I mean, that's one way to do it. Just saying. If you have an attractive sister, send her to a coffee shop in Palo Alto, and lots of guys will download the app. Can borrow my sister. She's not doing much these days, I guess. Okay, so that aside, there's many different ways to get that. Let's actually talk about that with a real-life example. A bunch of guys that are now based here in San Francisco. I met them in Hong Kong when they were doing this. Let me Google for it. Ever hear of the site Buffer? How we went from idea to paying customer. Yeah, that's good. Before we look at Buffer, hold on. I didn't answer, no one answered my question. Do you remember someone said 9 weeks, and or 9 months, and I said 9 hours? Yeah, 9 hours is too long. What? Yeah, your first MVP. Come on. If you want to get 100 people to your site, it's very, very easy. Just, as I said, send an attractive girl to the coffee shop, buy some Google AdWords with some provocative things, and you can get people really, I'm not kidding. I'll give you another example. Why do you have to build anything at all? I had someone come to me in the accelerator and said, I still think travel is broken. Ever use TripAdvisor? Like, I'm going to Tahoe next week with my wife, and like I'm trying to find stuff, and like TripAdvisor is just like, it's just broken. Like, we fixed a lot of things with mobile and web. Like, we can presumably order food. We can order stuff from Amazon. Apparently we've been doing that we fixed that 20 years ago. But travel is still pretty broken. Like, Expedia is painful, and now it's a monopoly. It bought everyone else, right? So I'm still looking for some good travel startups, and they come to Hong Kong, and like, we're gonna build a travel startup where you just put in 2 or 3 things, it knows you from your profile, you click a button, it tells you what to do for the day. And it gives it to you on a map, and you go from point A to point B to point C, boom, 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 go from here to 3 o'clock. My mom would love this. So we go, all right, we need like 2 days, because I'm like, first they wanted 2 months, and then I'm like, how about 2 hours? And then they're like, no, we can do this in 2 days. We can code it up. We have a wicked smart, ninja coder. I'm like, yeah. I tell them, don't bring your coder to the first month of the program. I don't want your tech people. They're like, what are you talking about? How are we going to have our ninja coder type up the MVP? I said, go to the main tourist district. Get a frickin' map. Put some pinpoints on the map and hand it to people. And see if they want to use a map-based itinerary, because that's the purpose of it on the phone. And then if people say, this would be better if it was on the phone, then you're kind of onto something, right? Why go build it? If everyone says, I would never use a map, and then you say, why? And if the answer was, oh, if it was on the phone, I would use it, then you can start maybe typing some code in and make it rudimentary, of course. But why build something, right? So I'm going to show you how Buffer cheated and built a good company behind it. I love they cheated. So what they did is they built a landing page. And on their landing page was this. So those of you who don't know Buffer, you don't need to know much about Buffer, except the simple fact that they built an awesome MVP. And it basically said, here's what we do. Boom, boom, boom. Here, click here to sign up. Look, it's green. They obviously were not targeting the Chinese market. And it's ironic because Joel was in Hong Kong and I was talking to him and I should have told him, dude, but he wasn't testing for the Chinese market. Okay, so when you click on this button, what do you expect should happen? You can sign up for the service. But this is like a bogus MVP, right? Or whatever you want to call it. We're tricking you MVP. It goes, oops, we never built Buffer. We lied to you. We just wanted to see how many people clicked that button. But think about it. They can get to that 4% by calculating three gates. They spent $100 on Google AdWords. That sends over 10,000 people. Right? The first 10,000 go away. And then how many people click on the button is your second conversion number. And then how many people actually put their, because then this text says, oh, when we're done with Buffer, we'll give it to you. So if you actually put your email in here and click that button, that's how they get down to that magic, like say 4%. Right? It's cheating. But it's awesome cheating because they don't have to build anything. They're letting the customer's behavior and they're measuring it. So they're measuring a customer behavior and letting that determine what to do next. So what do you think they did next? What would you do next? And no cheating and Googling the site or the blog post.
MVP number 1.
Well, this was MVP number 1. Valid. So what's the next assumption? People will pay for this. How much? Right. So now they did the next one. Same page. So first of all, that was funny. I was like bouncing. How long did it take him to build this? Like an hour. And how long would it take them to go get like 10,000 people to the website? Another hour. Right, so 2 hours, right? Okay, so now, part 2. 8 minutes more of coding. They have the original first page. They have the original second page. Oops. They put in the middle pricing plans. I want the freebie, I'm cheap version, which I still have. Don't tell them. They're not watching this. If they are, sorry, Joel. I don't pay for your service, but I talk about it all the time. Actually, you should give me a free account, shouldn't they? Right? Then there is the $5 and the $20 version. People click on one, and then as you know what happens, boom. Yeah, we're not alive yet. Give us your email, and we will gladly take $20 a month from you when we're live. That is an MVP, everyone, right? It has all the things. It's minimal. It is something that can measure a user's behavior. They went in and started trying to make predictions about said user behavior that were grounded in the CLV minus CAC formula. They tested those metrics by using Google AdWords and having real conversion rates. And then they measured the results. And by measuring the results, they made decisions about their price. I couldn't tell you how much Buffer cost today because, as I told you, I used the freebie account. But in essence, it's probably not those numbers that were up there either, right? They let the market tell them what the market wanted, right? So they went back to their canvas and started thinking about the segments, started thinking about the value prop. Once you start getting clarity, before we wrap up, and I'll do the quick Q&A in just a second, once you get clarity around this, or maybe I'll say it differently, when do you stop? Because this is fun. It's work, but it's fun work. Like building a product kind of sucks. I mean, if you've ever built a product, it's long, it's painful, developers are cranky, they make too much money. So this is fun. When do you stop and actually start building the product? When you figure out, well, how do you know your core assumptions are figured out? Differential plus. You're all right, but the way that you actually have, yes?
Why do you stop doing this?
Well, you stop doing it for these notions. When you add new features, you're doing it for the new features, right? But when you actually say, okay, it's time to actually build the startup. Like right now, you're still in Starbucks playing around. Remember, you've only killed 6 hours. Like the time you were here tonight, you probably could have done all of this, right? So what do you do tomorrow? More of this. But eventually, you stop doing this for the business and you build the business around it. When you start building your business around it is when you stop learning from these MVPs and you've got some traction, so to speak, right? You know, people are like talking about it, or people putting their emails in that box and stuff like that. But you are correct. You never actually stop the process of learning, which is a process called customer development. Okay, that is it. I'll just pull up back here. I think it is now time for question and answers.
Seems I missed your last part about how to stop the MVP and begin to do the real work. So can you give us a little bit more?
Oh, when do you stop MVPing? Well, the philosophy of continuous learning never stops.
Okay.
But when you actually stop doing fake web pages and build real products, when you stop learning. When the data that comes back is not new to you anymore, it's time to build the product.
Typically, what's the user's patience if they do?
Typically, what is the user's patience? Very, very, very small, always. So I get pushback from entrepreneurs to say, if I build an MVP, it is going to ruin my trust with the users. First of all, Buffer didn't use their trust, right? Buffer's doing just fine. But if for some reason you really think you're going to ruin your trust with the users, like GoDaddy has like domains for like $3.99, right? So just go register a domain and don't even tell anyone it's you. Okay.
Hi, Steve. My name's Eric.
Hello, Eric.
Hi. Quick question regarding the fact that when you think of an idea, there are probably 10 more other companies or business entrepreneurs think about the same idea. How do you take? I mean, do you need to take that into account when you're determining your features to develop?
So you're saying is someone has a lot of ideas. Like, no, I'm sorry.
If
you have
someone
an idea,
has a, right,
you have an
if someone
idea,
has
you're worried about
potentially
in the
similar,
marketplace, there's lots of other ideas out there.
would that affect your process at all?
Does that affect your process? No, because you have to be faster than them. You have to be better than them. So in essence, if 10 people have the exact same idea at the exact same time, only one of them will probably be the next Facebook, right? Because MySpace, all the other guys, boom, 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 Google+, everyone else died, right? It's your ability to execute and your ability to go through this process and then execute once it's over, right? Is going to determine the difference. So don't worry about the other people too much. I mean, obviously keep an eye out on them. Like if they're like way, way ahead of you, it might be a sign, but okay. Next question.
So, are there any other ideas to do MVP, like other than a fake page or something?
Are there any other ideas to do an MVP besides a fake page or a map in the street?
Okay, yeah.
Right? There's tons of them. I think in the Lean Startup book, they talk about their MVP where they were doing, I forget exactly what it was. I'm gonna get this not 100% correct, but it was a website where you put in like foods that you like, and recipes will come back. And then you can click on it, and then like Safeway will deliver those things to your house, or Whole Foods, or whatever, right? And when they did that, they said, we're gonna have an algorithm, and the algorithm's gonna analyze your ingredients, and professional nutritionist people will figure it out, and then we will have deals with supermarkets, and the supermarkets will deliver. They had none of that. They had an MVP. So what they did is people put it on the website, they asked like their wives, then they went shopping themselves and went to the person's house, right? That's an MVP. It takes a little more than an hour, but you'd be surprised how many of those you could do in a day, right? So a fake web page is an easy way, but not every product will have that. If you're building a piece of hardware, your MVP will obviously have to be a prototype. It might take you a few days to get through it. But again, it's got to measure that behavior, right?
Thank you.
Cool. I feel like a politician, and everyone's like lining up to answer hard questions, like,
No, that's
what
not
are
a
the
hard
taxes
question.
going to be next year? I'm going to lower taxes, just to let you know.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm going to implement the bad MVP tax.
Okay, that was the only question I had, so I'm going back. So you showed a fake page, and user may end up show interest with the product based on the description on the page. So, what if the company doesn't end up develop the product, or may not develop the product as good as they are defining in the page?
So meaning is your actual product is worse than your MVP?
Yeah.
Then,
I mean,
then you should start a consulting business that just builds MVPs for people. But that actually goes back to, in all seriousness, it goes back to the question the gentleman in the back had about 2 questions ago, which was, if there's a million ideas out there, and I said it's a combination of your ability to go through this process that we just talked about over the last hour, right? Very disciplined, right? Because most of you walked in the room thinking an MVP, you could just make up numbers. 50, yeah, right? And now we've realized, no, there's actual math and science behind it. So that's the first step. But then the second step is actually the ability to execute, is actually stop MVPing and actually execute. And some people can't do that. I've seen startups that are just like years later, they're still MVPing and like money's coming in. I'm like, guys, people are paying you. That might be a sign. But, no, we need to figure out product market fit.
You said MVP is fun. I mean,
MVP is fun.
Oh, MVP is fun.
It's actually not fun.
And product for
It's
developing
fun for me to watch you do it.
Okay.
Because for you, it sucks because remember the numbers. Usually your MVP comes up to like 0.78% when you're looking for 4. And yeah, that usually is very sad because you're like, I really, really, really wanted to build this, right? So, but the reason why I say it's fun is because it's a process of discovery, right? Discovery is almost always a lot of fun.
I have another question.
No one else is behind you.
Yeah. Yeah. The other guy asked you a question like,
What are take the other guy's question?
What? No, not the question. What are other ways to do the MVP? Or what are the cheapest ways to do MVP actually? I mean,
So I'll tell you real quickly.
Yeah.
The cheapest way to make an MVP, if you have some kind of mobile app,
okay.
what do you think you need to do? Do you need to go like learn fancy old Swift? Is that the latest that Tim Cook is saying? Learn Swift. And if you're in Java land, you're doing Android, make a mobile responsive design web page, right? And then come up to me in a coffee shop. And then that gets onto my phone. Like today, my friend gave me an MVP, and it was an MVP, legitimately, because it had 2 buttons, right? But it took me like an hour to get it installed. I had to go to Facebook and allow permissions. I had to download Test Flight. And then he had to send me a message, which I thought was spam. It really looked like spam from Apple. It goes, an iTunes user has sent you a message. I'm like, seriously? It's phishing, right? Like, put in your blood type and your mother's maiden name, right? And like, I had to go do that, unfish it, right? Then get it. I mean, it took like 45 minutes to get this, Swift app on my computer. So simple, cheap ways. You're building most likely your products will be some kind of mobile app. Build an HTML5 JavaScript like responsive website that when you load it onto the phone, the URL, it looks like a web app. I'm sorry, it looks like a mobile app. And then have a couple buttons. His app had 2 buttons. Like you went through this whole process to build this native app for 2 buttons to test the user behavior, right? And measure the result. So he had, of course, 5 reasons why he needed to do it native, which they always have 5.
Hang on, Stuart.
Your job is to talk them out of it. Like, no, Steve said.
Okay, everybody,
Everybody. Oh, you can ask them. I'm good.
I'm going to ask them. I have
I
an
could chill out.
MVP. YouMike.me.
You, hold on. Let me write it down. You,
The letter U.
you,
Mike, M-I-C, dot,
me.
me. Yeah, do it in a browser.
This is not
So,
copyright infringement, pornography, or anything like that. Actually, I don't care.
no, we already did it at Angel Hack. It's not copyright.
YouMike.me. Make your voice heard. Yes,
Yeah, there's a little menu up in the upper left-hand corner.
that is not a menu. That is a hamburger.
That's a hamburger. Well,
Join
yeah.
a meeting.
Yeah. Well, why don't you just go about us? Obviously, we need a little work here.
Boom. But I see where you're going. Everyone here could have voted on the session,
Right.
which is brilliant. Exactly right. Already deleted?
What?
How could you delete it? It's not an app.
Well, I got your data point already. I'll go check the logs when I get home.
No, this is a good example of an MVP that's obviously went through an iteration or two, right? You've obviously went further along, but you're basically saying, will a speaker, so like let's hack this, right? First is, will a speaker give this to the people? So I would have had to have given you this before the presentation started, right?
No, just before the Q&A session.
Or before the Q&A session. So first of all, you have to give it to the speaker and convince them that they want this feedback. Second, the speaker has to remember, because I've actually been approached with a few of these in the past and promised to do it, and they started with QR codes. I just forgot to do it. And then I see them in the back, and I'm like, oh. Third, the audience is going to type in umike.me on their phone. There's an assumption that there's actually reliable Wi-Fi or mobile connectivity. Then there's assumptions that people care enough to vote, and that this metric, which is yes, no, maybe, I'm going to say this was a green for sure.
Scroll down a little bit.
Scroll down a little bit. Look at that, 71% were happy in our fictitious survey. Undefined. Oh no, some people.
It won't change.
It won't change. So what happens is, then you're going to say that this feedback is valuable to the presenter, and that the audience gets some form of incentive or happiness of doing it, right? Typically, people are happy. People really, really hate a session or really, really like a session, they'll do this, right? So your MVP really should forget about those outliers, right? If you had a really good speaker, this is probably what it looks like. Like 75% of the people are like, all right, cool. Like Steve was funny, he was informative. And you're like, oh yeah, he like used some bad words, made fun of fast food restaurants. And then you look in these boxes here. Well, what does that mean, right? You start, your assumptions go around there. Then now you have spam me. I like that. Email@gmail.com. I have a better email. My email address is actually gmail@gmail.com. No. Spam me, gmail.gmail. Test sent. So then, of course, or the stats were sent. Then, of course, you have other assumptions around this. But you can do a lot of different assumption tests around something like that. How long did that take to build?
Oh, well, there's actually real code
Multiple
behind.
iterations, right?
Yeah, but it took a Angel Hack weekend.
Angel Hack weekend, right? So in a weekend,
There's actually, it
you
actually
have a
does what we,
functional prototype. How many iterations did you go through during that weekend?
I can't remember. There's too much lack of sleep. So,
But it was a lot.
yeah.
The answer would be more than one,
Yes.
less than a million.
But we didn't show it to anybody until the presentation stage. In other words, that is what we showed
At the finals.
at the finals, and then we actually started taking Q&A, and you could actually hear the people.
Playing with it and doing
Right.
that. Okay, very cool. I like that. Everyone give him a round of applause. So in my opinion, that is far more functional than a lot of the things that we were talking about. But that took a weekend, right? Not 9 weeks, not 9 months. And I think that holds to our spirit of what we've been talking about all night, is to do this fast and to measure some results. So I don't know the exact results that he was measuring, because I don't know what the business model is. If the business model is charge the speakers, charge Rob, charge IBM, I don't know. You have to test that. That's part of the process, right? But the first thing you do is make sure that people actually want to do this. So think of Google. Google, who's Google's real customer? The advertisers, right? But before they can sell advertising, they have to build a product that we had the eyeballs to, right? So they had to MVP that first, and then MVP the whole auction and AdWords and system, right? So in essence, this may be your Google, and then you got to figure out who pays, right? So that, right? But again, a weekend, a hackathon, right? 36 or so hours, right, from start to finish. Did you know the other folks before you started, or you just kind of built the team as you got there?
No, I had the idea 4 years ago. And,
Oh, wait a second. Wait a second. How is the 4 years? Dude, you should have lied.
Well, we actually
for me.
didn't do any code then.
Okay.
I got the domain name 4 years ago.
I'll let that slide. I'll let that part slide. So it's the
So,
4-year MVP. It's the domain squatter MVP. It's like, I got to do something with this domain. One day I will go to a hackathon.
No, I had.
I have like every X-rated domain ever made. Like I am ready. I'm going to
Okay.
just sell them all one day and retire to Hawaii.
No, I'm hard of hearing, so I had the idea, and I needed to find people to do it, so I didn't know these 5 people before we did the hackathon.
And the idea in your brain
Was,
on Friday afternoon was different than the idea you presented on Sunday afternoon?
yeah,
It morphed.
a little bit, yeah.
Cool.
Well, actually, a lot. The implementation morphed a lot.
Yeah. That's a great, so a couple people asking for more examples of an MVP. This is kind of like your 3rd and 4th iteration or more. Well, he said he went through like a lot, right? Because the first iterations don't even need to be as complex as something that took 48 hours, but this is what you start building up to, right? And then eventually your iterations get longer and longer.
Hi, Steve. Hi,
Yes.
Steve.
Hey,
So-
this is your second question.
Yeah.
Sorry to let you know is when you ask a second question, yeah, you have to pay $5.
all right.
Just kidding.
Okay, so I was thinking
really
about
close.
an example, like company like Facebook or Google. They actually improvements upon existing services, and in those cases, the difference may be better results, than say Yahoo or Excite at Home or versus Facebook versus
Excited home,
MySpace.
you are dating yourself, dude.
So
Excited home.
how in those cases how do you build an MVP, because the service is already there, like there are existing services, but you already
So you're saying that Facebook should never have gotten started because Yahoo and Excite already existed?
no I was saying that in those cases, how do you do MVP? Like for example, you already say we already see MySpace, okay, and then say like someone's going to build Facebook. How does he validate the idea that a better
Got it.
MySpace is needed?
So that's a better example. First we had Friendster, and then we had MySpace, then we had Facebook, right? I actually resisted. So one of my friends was like more or less the founder of Friendster. So he kind of invented social networking. And then I was on Friendster. I was all in. Then there was the architecture. Sorry, Ian. Architecture was sucky. Again, he's on vacation in London. There's no way he's watching this. Yeah, the architecture was sucky. It kept crashing. So we all moved to MySpace. And then I was like, all right, fine. I moved to MySpace and a lot of friends on MySpace. And then Facebook came, and I resisted it for a while. I'm like, oh, we're just going to skip. I said, I'm going to skip the Facebook and go to the 4th one. That didn't work out for me. Then I was like a late hold. Like my dad sent me a friend request. I'm like, oh shit, I gotta join Facebook. So, why did Facebook exist? Let's not talk about how Facebook grew to be, but like what motivated Mark Zuckerberg? The delta between the problem and his solution was big. MySpace allowed you to have one photo on your website and music. That's it. Facebook, unlimited photos, unlimited music. Videos, I don't think just in the very beginning, but you could put all these photos and music. One feature differentiated to 2. If you've ever hung out with software architects, and when they tell you the system is architected that way, that means it's going to take a really long time because they built a database and they put in the table one picture, one thing, and it's going to take forever to re-architect. And there's actually white papers written how MySpace was trying to re-architect to deal with the demand, add more pictures, and by that point, Facebook already had a runaway success. So there was a pain point. It was guys looking at girls' pictures, and there's only one. And the girls were like, well, I look better in that picture, but I can only choose this picture. And then there were musicians that were like, well, we want to put photos of our show, and then we want to put music from the show, but then we're going on tour. And we can't put multiple pictures in multiple tour dates. So Facebook, by accident, because like we all saw the movie, like it was all about dating and stuff like that, or not even dating. It was all about like people who couldn't really have plans on Friday nights. They didn't have to go to the Hyatt Regency or anything like that. And what happens is, while they were solving a slightly different problem, they stumbled across, with the MVP process, the solution that people wanted more pictures, more music, more comments, things like that. Right? I mean, MySpace was a glorified static web page that you could change some parameters to it.
Any more questions or MVP pitches?
I think we have one more.
Hi, Steven. This is Z here.
Hi, Z.
Yeah, so my question is, in the case where you mentioned MVP, it's starting from the customer segment, right?
Yes.
So what if the product in my mind actually involves multiple kinds of participants? So
Multiple segments.
So just imagine like
Draw a line.
Mm-hmm.
Put Segment 1?
So does that mean that I need to do MVP
Yes.
for each segment?
Yes. So what you're describing is a classic two-sided marketplace. Can someone give me an example of a two-sided marketplace? Google. Yes. Uber. Yes. But that's assuming you could choose your driver. They choose. That's a 1.5-sided marketplace because the driver is chosen for you. Airbnb, perfect example. Online dating, another example, right? Two-sided marketplace.
Right.
So your Airbnb, you have to make sure you have a value prop for the producer and a value prop for the consumer.
Okay.
Right? So I have seen there's these tools out there where you can build these canvases, Canva, whatever, and you can color code them. That gets very complicated. Just make 2 canvases. Whatever it is, that makes it super simple, right? So one other thing with a two-sided marketplace and what you're describing, like in the modern economy now, this is getting a little harder because everything seems to be a two-sided marketplace, like aggregation theory in effect. So what happens is, remember, what's the most important side of your two-sided marketplace?
The one that's paying.
No. It's not the one that's paying. In an online dating site, if you charge money, who's going to pay the money on an online dating site? This always works when I give this example for some reason. The guys. So what do you need by definition in an online dating site? Girls. Right. So like when I'm coaching a startup that's building some kind of niche online dating site, I say, go to a real dating site and scrape the girls. Then the guys will pay and get on. Right? When I say scrape, you know what I mean, right? Screen scrape the girls up the site or manually enter them. Right? So meaning is, and the reason why is because your producers have a high cost of switching. It's hard for the girl to switch because she's got to get the picture, the this, the that. It's easy for the guys to switch, right? Build it, they will come, quite literally. So YouTube, a great example. You pay close attention to the producer because their switching costs are higher. The consumer, if YouTube starts to suck, we just go to the next site, like a click of the button. It's not that easy if you're filming this right now is going on a YouTube channel. If in a year from now YouTube is no longer cool, like what does Rob have to do? Like, I don't know, like YouTube makes it really hard. You have to like basically go in the movies. You have to take your camera, play the YouTube video, or say, Steve, come back and do the whole talk again, right? So you have two sides of a marketplace. Your typical MVP will be looking at the people that are the producers first. Once you handle the producers, then you start looking at the MVP for the consumers, right? Because I always get the question, which MVP do I do first?
So that was actually going to kind of be my question, but
awesome,
would you ever recommend,
IDSP.
would you ever recommend split testing either multiple assumptions that are similar or different customer segments, or is there a reason you wouldn't split test multiple MVPs at the same time?
So the question is about split testing, which is like A/B testing, and would you split test an MVP? And I would say no, because what you want to do is you want to get a user behavior, right? So in essence, if you think you need to split test an MVP, take one step back and look at the assumption. Your assumption is probably too complex, right? So then actually, at the worst case, you would have 2 MVPs, and then compare the results.
On that note, let's hear it for Steve.
Thank you.